world where nostalgia rages across the land, where everyone and their mother has a podcast, where there's still a movie trailer guy who says, in a world. Three friends revisit films, shows, and games that molded them as they search for answers to life, the universe, and everything in between. Settle in and join us for Screen Refresh.
Welcome back to Screen Refresh, a show where we revisit the films, shows, and games that molded us as we search for answers to life, the universe, and everything in between. I'm your host, Tim, and I'm joined by the rest of the Screen Refresh crew. Dean, David, and Nick.
Hating God works for me.
It's goddamn Christmas.
Hello there.
I was watching the movie and I heard that line come up and I'm like, that's what I'm using.
So, in time for the holiday season, we're going to get into the most cheerful Christmas film that we have, which is going to be Richard Donner's Lethal Weapon from 1987. Okay, so off-air, David did remind us we would like to, at the top of Lethal Weapon, give a trigger warning, just to let everybody know, if you haven't already seen the movie, suicide is definitely a topic throughout this. The character of Riggs is suicidal throughout it, but if it's something that is a concern to you, if it's something that's a trigger to you, that's going to be something that comes up a fair amount throughout this episode.
This is the first time I ever saw this, I have to be honest.
You've never seen Lethal Weapon?
I've never seen Lethal Weapon.
You know, funny enough, though, I kind of agree with that, too. I don't want to say this was my first one, but consciously watching it, it almost counts as like a first-time watch.
Yeah, I also don't think I had actually seen this before. I was watching the movie and I was like, when's the toilet scene? When he's like on the toilet and the bomb comes up, and then it never happens. And I was just like, I don't think I ever saw this.
Yeah, I think that was the cold open for the second one.
Yeah, because I think that's the thing that becomes difficult is mixing, matching of, well, the first one between the second one, between the third one. And then it's, okay, so the first one is Gary Busey. The second one is Diplomatic Immunity. The third one is whatever the third one is. And the fourth one is with Jet Li. So the third one is the one that's really tough
Rock.
To figure out. Yeah, also Chris Rock.
And Joe Pesci?
Joe Pesci's in all of them, starting from, I think, the second.
Oh, the second one. Okay. It's funny because much like Wayne's World 2, I had never seen The Graduate, and the whole ending, like peak of the movie, is a parody of the movie The Graduate. That ending.
Oh yeah. And
I went to film school and watched The Graduate, and I was like, oh shit, this is what they were parodying.
They ripped Wayne's World.
That happened for me in this. During there's a movie called, you guys got to watch it if you haven't, National Lampoon's Loaded Weapon 1. It's a airplane style Zucker. I don't think it's the Zucker brothers, but it's that style movie, Naked Gun. And this is Lethal Weapon is the main riff they're doing on top of all the other jokes. But
because it's Samuel L. Jackson and Emilio Estevez, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Some scenes came up and I was like, oh shit, this is what they're. I know the joke. I know the joke scene of this.
I feel like I almost knew the parody of this more than I knew about the movie. Like in my head, like they had like in the beginning, like we have that really brief, trailer on the beach scene, and like all I could think of is the Emilio Estevez of like there was like a helicopter that like strafed his trailer on the beach, like blowing up the propane tanks, and like I get through that scene in this, and I'm just like, wow, that there really wasn't a scene on the beach with his trailer. They just kind of were like, hey, you want to do a thing that'll be kind of funny?
Well, I think in the second one or the third one, there is a scene of like somebody opening fire on his trailer down at the beach or something like that.
Oh yeah, it was
probably
like
a conglomeration.
An amalgamation of whatever was out at the time.
The funny thing would be if Loaded Weapon 1 came out before Lethal Weapon 2, and then they're like, actually, that's a pretty good idea.
That came out in
watch the rest of them, I will say that.
Yeah, I think I've only seen clips of all three of them. I don't think I've ever watched any of them in their entirety.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat, honestly, even with how well regarded the franchise is, I think.
I saw 4 the most because it came out when I was old enough to kind of understand movies and just appreciate them more. Because when did the 4, of all the notes that I took, I did not look up when 4 came out.
Because 4 was actually of a time when we were like cognizant of, oh, things are getting released. I have some agency in choosing what I watch. I'm not driving to the theater to go see 4 myself, but at least I know like, oh, like this is a thing to watch.
Yeah, it was on pay-per-view. I was 12 when it came out, so I was definitely old enough to want to see this movie, even though my mom could have said no, but it was the babysitter, so I often got to see movies like this. So 4 was the one that I saw the most, and then I understood that this is the last one, and it's a ton of callbacks to the movies that I haven't seen yet, but I still enjoyed the hell out of it. And then over the years, finally seeing the first one, and it became more of like a clip movie for me, because I don't remember the movie itself. I just remember specific scenes, like everyone walking in on Murtaugh in the bathroom while he's trying to take a bath with the cake, or like the scene later on with the shooting range, and Murtaugh is all proud of like, look what I can do, and then like, oh look, center mass, and then Riggs shows him his picture and it's really center mass, or even how he's able to make a picture like a smiley face using the one shot that Murtaugh was able to do.
Imagine if he does that on actual perps.
Jesus Christ.
Pull him off the case.
Yeah, this was it was nice to watch it, and it was actually hard to take notes through the movie because it was just, I was watching it.
Yeah. I think that's the hardest thing, is sometimes we'll go over movies that it's like, oh, it's fun to, or it's nice to poke fun at, and oh, I remember this, and then get to some that I'm just like, oh no, like this is actually a movie I enjoy that I'm just like sitting and watching. Mm-hmm. So this was one that I saw a lot just because it was on TV often, but it was the TV edit, but it was like this one, the second one, and the fourth one, and then like never the third one for some reason. It's like TNT had Lethal Weapon 4 on lock, and whenever they would show it, it would always be part of like, and now the Lethal Weapon Sunday Marathon, and they would show the rest of them. So I've seen this a bunch, and it has always been a movie that I never thought of for Christmas time until like the past 10 years or so, and reassessing all of the non-Christmassy Christmas films. So we could have gone Die Hard, but instead we juked and we went Lethal Weapon. Even though there's a lot of Die Hard connections in this.
Yeah, I think also Die Hard is, while it's a non-Christmas movie, I think it's kind of everyone's go-to for that. Where this is like one of those much less known. I mean, the Christmas is much more fringe in this than it is Die Hard, but it's definitely there. It's definitely like set dressing.
Yeah. Like there's a lot of scenes of people just saying like Merry Christmas, like sarcastically.
Mm-hmm. You know, hot take, I actually kind of like this more than Die Hard.
Really?
Die Hard is an amazing action movie, and that one you can easily just throw on in the background. But the chemistry that Mel Gibson and Danny Glover have is the whole reason why they were able to spawn 3 more movies. So that chemistry is just so fun to watch. I really enjoyed watching this from start to finish, because it's just the way that they keep ragging on each other. And then like when like things are really hitting the fan, you know, they have that brotherhood that, you know, I got your back if you got mine mentality. And it's a lot more, I don't want to say easier to digest, because I mean, both movies are easy watches, but just their chemistry alone, I think I preferred a lot more versus Bruce Willis's one-man army. I mean, by no means it's like I hate Die Hard and I'll never watch it again, but I mean, if I had a choice between the two in a marathon, so to speak, I think I would pick Die Hard second and go for Lethal Weapon first.
I hate Die Hard and I'll never watch it again.
I do think their dynamic is what makes this film what it is. Like you said, like granted, Die Hard, like John McClane has Reginald Val Johnson's character, but it's not like they have that same camaraderie, and they don't have that same like back and forth kind of stuff that we see out of this. But I am surprised that going through and then seeing like one person, then 2 people, then 3 people of, wait, all of you are in Die Hard, and there's like entire outfits, there's entire sequences that I'm like, is this not just Die Hard? So this was getting made around the same time, and then Die Hard came out the following year. So it's just it's interesting that it's Oh no, go ahead.
I'll just say I only recognized Al Leong. Like, how there's a lot of people in Die Hard?
Mary Ellen Trainor.
Who's
She
that?
was the psychologist in this one that was like, Riggs is crazy.
Yeah.
And then she was also in Die Hard as one of the newscasters.
Okay.
Oh, huh.
Also, the fact that the back half of this film is Murtaugh running around in the white sleeveless shirt and his khaki pants, very similar to our John McClane outfit. Even the ending where all of a sudden the thought subdued killer springs back up and then they spin around and fire at him. A la
He's got a
the end
gun.
of Die
I was
Hard.
pleasantly surprised to hear that line in the movie.
What if somebody just shouted it and he didn't actually? Gary Busey just looks surprised and he's like, what?
That's the
It
police's
threw
MO.
me for a
Come on.
loop.
Riggs just throws a gun at him, and he's like, "He's got a gun." I mean, I wouldn't put it past him in this. I mean, this movie in some ways feels like a period piece of the 80s, where it's just like the number of times where certain things came up, and I almost cringe a little bit. I'm like, oh, yep, the 80s.
They sure don't make them like they used to when it comes to this.
It's during a time where it's like the glorification of the police force and not like a introspective look at it. See, the end of this is essentially they form a mob around a fist fight, and they're like, "It's fine. I approve this because he got 2 of ours." Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like he killed 2 police officers, so now he gets to beat the shit out of him on the front lawn.
You hear Murtaugh in the background, kill him, Riggs, snap his neck.
The amount of times he says break his neck is like, holy shit. At first I was like, this is suspect, but then I'm like, well, he did just kill 2 cops. I'm like, yeah, just go with it. It's fine.
I know, and Murtaugh's running around being like, "This is my scene, and I'm okay with it." And I'm like, I don't think that makes it okay, though.
And it's my front lawn, so it's private property. Everybody go home.
And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, this is a good fist fight sequence, but like, this isn't okay.
I think Gary Busey's going to be able to beat this one. If they bring him in, he's out the next day. He's going to be like, yeah, the entire police force surrounded me and fist fought me.
Man, was this a trial by combat kind of situation? Like, if he won the fight, does he just get to leave?
He becomes the next sergeant. You all report to me now.
You keep what you kill.
So this film,
That
March
is a
6th,
cringe reference.
March 6th, 1987, perfect time for a Christmas movie release. It was released against Angel Heart, if you ever see it. It's a terrific little Robert De Niro and Mickey Rourke kind of supernatural noir film, and Tin Man with Richard Dreyfuss and Danny DeVito. Also in this month, we had Evil Dead 2. We had Heat, but not the one you're thinking of. It's Heat with Burt Reynolds, Raising Arizona, Burglar with Whoopi Goldberg, and Blind Date with Bruce Willis. Yes,
so they retroactively
Heat,
changed
but not
it
the one
to-
you're thinking of.
They retroactively changed it to Heat with Burt Reynolds, just for the confusion.
Yeah, so this way, every time somebody searches Heat on YouTube and they're like, yeah, I want to see Heat full movie, and it gives them this one, and they're like, no. So with a budget of $15 million, it brought in $120.2 million and spawned a franchise. So Richard Donner, who directed this one, originally I guess they were looking at Leonard Nimoy. Leonard Nimoy passed on this because he didn't really care to do all the action sequences. He was working on, I think, 3 Men and a Baby or something around this time.
God, as Murtaugh?
No, he was going to direct.
Oh, direct it. I was so confused.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't see him in either of these roles.
Yeah, no, he already had done 3 Men and a Baby, and then he was going to do The Good Mother, and he was focusing on that.
I didn't know he directed.
We all remember that film.
Oh, yeah.
So instead they get Richard Donner doing stuff like Lady Hawk, The Goonies, Superman, Scrooge, The Omen, Maverick. So a number of things that are more action adventure oriented from there. Writer on this, Shane Black. There was also a second writer, Jeffrey Boehm, who did some uncredited rewrites just to add some more humor to the script, to do some punch-ups on some things.
He
just
added
because
the
Shane Black's, they
homophobia.
said, was a little... What was that?
He added the homophobia lines.
I didn't even catch any of those.
Really? There's two.
Oh,
there's only
there's-
two. There was
there's-
only two, I think, that I...
They're
I
big
pick
ones,
out.
but yeah.
Yeah.
So Jeffrey Boehm did uncredited rewrites. He also did work on Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade, Dead Zone, Inner Space, Lost Boys, Adventures of Briscoe County Jr., And then Shane Black, who worked on the original script for this, he did this one. He did a script for the second one, but it was turned down because I guess it was too dark, and he killed Riggs at the end of it. So this was the last one that he did. I don't know. I don't think he came back for 3 or anything like that. I think he was just done with the series after the first one. Even though it's so tied to Shane Black, he's not around for it very long. But yeah, he would later go on to do like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Last Action Hero, Nice Guys, Long Kiss Goodnight, Monster
He did
Squad.
Last Action Hero?
Yeah, he wrote that.
Yeah, he was credited for the third one, but he didn't actually write on it. I think it was more just like an intellectual property kind of thing because he wrote the characters. But like, wasn't it? I think this was the first writing credit he had, though, was for Lethal Weapon.
Yes. I think I did read that where this was his first writing credit, and this is what really put him on the map.
I mean, or unless, well, Monster Squad came out the same year. I don't know which one was first.
Yeah, my guess probably this, then that.
Yeah.
But yeah, then from there, that kind of bloomed out into all of his other stuff, where he really kind of found that niche of like the more wise ass, fast talking, like buddy cop type things, like, or at least some sort of pair. So like when we had Long Kiss Goodnight, we had Last Boy Scout. Later when he did Last Action Hero. So a number of things from there to varying degrees. I still like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang the best. I think The Predator negates some of the good stuff that he did, but we'll never get to
points. That. It makes the Long Kiss Goodnight worse a little bit.
Music by Michael Kamen and Eric Clapton.
That threw me. Is he responsible for the saxophone? That's it. That's his only contribution. Like, this song would be so much better. But yeah, why not?
You know what this could use? Oh, guitar? No, saxophone.
Saxophone.
Which scene comes to mind, right? When I say they added saxophone at a really weird time.
Lost Boys?
No, in this movie.
Oh, never mind. What's that?
It's when his daughter comes down the stairs and she's wearing like a small dress, and it's like, this is my New Year's outfit, and it's like, it's like, that's your dad.
The sexy music for seeing your daughter was kind of strange.
I know it's supposed to just represent the daughter, but he's looking at her like dumbfounded, and I'm like, why are we playing this music?
I know they're going. Yeah, like I know they're going for like he's exasperated of I feel so old and like my daughter's out of control and she's all grown up now.
Yeah.
But to play that music, then have him be like shaking his head and he's like heartbreaker, and then he leaves. It's like, wait, what?
It was a weird.
It's like I get that music was for us. I think the way that it framed him into the scene was just like, what?
It doesn't.
No, I didn't take it that way.
I didn't think they were insinuating something. That's just how it came across. It's just like, it was weird.
Because for me, that audio cue is always the exasperation of like, I'm too old for this shit. So seeing her come down the stairs like that, and then him reacting that way, following with the music cue, that's where it's just like, he doesn't like it.
Really?
I didn't take it as like
to that line, kind of.
Well, it's just the cue usually plays whenever it usually would be followed up with like, I'm too old for this shit. And then, you would hear the sax riff, but he didn't say it yet for the first time. So
we get started with a Christmas intro with Jingle Bell Rock, just to remind everybody.
Hold on. I have notes.
Oh, go ahead.
So in tradition with, I'm going to try to do this more often, a citation needed. So Tim hit a couple of the points that I was able to find, but apparently this movie had a different opening and a different ending.
Mm-hmm.
So in the earlier draft of the script, Riggs is drinking with like dock workers who's tormenting a dog, and that's kind of where that's where he that's where he got the dog from. And then also in the original ending, it features Riggs and Murtaugh saying goodbye to each other, and Riggs telling Murtaugh not to quit the force because he's just too old, and then that's it. It doesn't have like the, I'm not going to eat this Christmas dinner that my wife made kind of thing by myself. You're going to enjoy it with me. I think one of the scenes was shot, but they just didn't use it.
While I'm glad they cut that opening because it doesn't sound great. It would certainly make the ending where we see his dog make a lot more sense. Where it's just like, oh, you mind if I bring a guest? Here's my dog. It's like, when the fuck did you get a dog? Like, this was never part of your
dog
character.
Earlier in the camper.
Yeah.
Does he?
There's a whole
totally
long
didn't
shot
notice
where
it.
the dog walks along the beach for about 40 seconds to the
Seriously? How
to
did
the
I miss
camper.
that?
No,
and
he
returns fire at a helicopter.
he wakes up and then he feeds the dog like whatever like scraps there are on the table. It's when Mel Gibson's buck naked.
Yeah, you were
Totally
distracted by
missed
his
this.
ass. That's I
I
understand.
might have been. It definitely could be.
It was America's ass at one time until it was handed down.
Australia's ass.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah,
But America's mullet.
America's mullet.
Before Mel Gibson goes crazy and becomes a much worse actor simultaneously.
At the funny how that works.
Yeah, right?
Shane Black's pick for Riggs wasn't actually considered for the roles because he originally wanted William Hurt, but the studio was like, no, and they really wanted like a bigger name for Riggs, and that's when they got Mel Gibson.
Is odd to me that they would want to go with William Hurt, because around this time William Hurt had like this reputation as like the thinking man's leading man of like a softer, more thoughtful leading character in films. So if you want to have like the tortured doctor or a scientist or something, you go with William Hurt, not like, oh, I want the suicidal, crazy, loose cannon cop.
Man, if he got casted then, he would have treated Riggs like a full-on psychopath then. Because it just... like, Riggs was kind of scary sometimes in this. But if it wasn't Mel Gibson, instead he played it like more like the sullen...
like serious.
Quiet kind of guy, that would have been a lot more freaky. But, I don't know. I mean, I think it might have been one of those cases of like Michael Keaton getting casted as Batman, and nobody liked that. You know, Robert Pattinson, even today, nobody liked that. And now, like, everyone's like, oh, he did such an amazing job. Like, no, I remember the backlash of every single casting that there was for a new Batman. Like, nobody liked them. And I think this might have been the same thing, too, where, like, I see the potential, and I think this role would be great, but the studio was like, no.
I also don't feel William Hurt would be a franchise guy of, like, Lethal Weapon 2, Lethal Weapon 3, Lethal Weapon 4. Like, I feel like he would just move on to a new challenging role kind of deal.
Yeah.
But who knows? He ended up in a Marvel movie, so.
And then the last one is the leads weren't acting their age. So Mel Gibson was 30 when he played 38-year-old Riggs, and Donnie Glover was 40 when he was playing a 50-year-old Murtaugh.
I did think it did look like they added like gray to his hair. I don't know if that was real or not. At least the
He
beard.
did.
Unless the beard was...
During the birthday... Well, I don't know, because I mean, I'm not 40, and I have plenty of gray in my beard already.
Yeah, I do too, but it just seemed added to me. But
it was kind of... when Murtaugh's like, I'm 50, and I'm looking at him naked in a bathtub, like, damn, dude, if you look 50, that looks good for 50.
Good for you.
Murtaugh's
for
like,
you.
I'm 50 years old.
I mean, that's one thing
I'm ancient
noticed.
with a ripped six-pack and like...
Yeah, like watching that scene, I'm like, wow, like Danny Glover's like ripped in this, and I'm like, I've never thought of him as ripped in anything, but I was like, all right, man, good for you.
But then the worst part is like, yeah, Mel Gibson, he's 30 playing a 38-year-old. I'm like, yeah, that checks out.
Yeah, that looks right.
I thought he was actually a little 40.
Yeah,
Maybe a little older than...
Like, looking at him, like, 30 at the time playing a 38-year-old, and I'm looking at the screen of, like, I'm 35 now, and I don't feel like I look older than he does. Maybe it's the mullet that really ages it.
And all the drinking and smoking.
The hair definitely adds to it.
Everyone in the 80s and, like, even in the 70 movies, their age does not translate to modern day to me. It's just I'll look at an older movie like Catherine O'Hara was 35 at the time of Home Alone, and I just can't see that, you know, like she's literally our age right now. Could I imagine going over and like hanging out with her as if like, you know, old high school friends?
Yeah.
I can't do it. It just, she still seems like she's always 7-8 years older than me.
She's definitely playing, like, the personality and the mannerisms are that of like, feels like 45-year-old mom, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very, not rigid, but, you know, just, I am a mom, like, I will act like one. That does make, I think that does add to the age feeling, or feeling older.
Yeah, and some actors that were cast at certain ages, just when you watch them and then compare them to your current life, like I'm older than this person was during the filming of this movie, and it's just weird to see them as like this could be me if I were to it's the same age kind of thing, and it's weird whenever I think of it that way.
Yeah,
there are odd age things. I always see the reference of like George Costanza during Seinfeld was supposed to be 30, and it was just like, what?
Yeah, that's actually a really good one, because it's really tough to even acknowledge that. Like, holy shit, you're only 30 and you look like you're pushing 40, man. Maybe even already there.
Yeah, I mean, we're at an age where we can watch some of the movies we grew up on and say we could have played the parents in these films.
Yeah,
it feels weird to me, and I'll never look at myself that way, but. You're right.
So we open with Jingle Bell Rock, and we have Jackie Swanson as Amanda Hunsaker taking a swan dive off the top of this hotel building establishment for a very wild, in-your-face opening to this film of Jingle Bell Rock, while somebody just like on drugs jumps off a building. And then we immediately get thrown to the Murtaugh house, where we get introduced to everybody's favorite cop, Detective Murtaugh, played by Danny Glover, as he is taking a bath, and everybody in his family barges in to bring him his birthday cake.
It's a little weird. I mean, it's like, it's his family, it's fine, but I can't imagine a family just, that's the time. This is the time we're going to surprise Dad.
Of like, blow out the candles.
Boundaries? What are those?
Also, who in their right mind has enough time before work just to take a full-on bath? Be like, yeah, you know what I'm going to do before I have to run off to work? Get a good long soak in.
Introduce 35 minutes into my calendar.
He gets up at 4:30 in the morning before he has to leave.
I do want to say one thing about the whole death of the Amanda Hunsaker character is that I remember. So when I finished the movie, I kind of sat there for a minute. Because it's never 100%. It never felt like it was 100% resolved on who poisoned her. Like, I know it was like, oh yeah, it was like Dixie. We think Dixie was involved, but then Dixie was blown up, so we never figured that out. And it was just like, I mean, indirectly we know who poisoned her, but I don't think we really know.
Blowing up answers it. I understand what you're saying, but why would they kill her? You know, like if she didn't know anything, because that seems to be their MO: kill anybody that knows something.
Yeah.
And so, like, I don't know if Dixie poisoned her, but Dixie knew who poisoned her, but we never actually learned who actually did it. It was probably Gary Busey, but you know.
And then it's like, as soon as Tom Atkins dies, they're just like, we don't really care about the mystery anymore.
Right. It all just kind of vanished. And it was like, yeah, we got the bad guy. And I was like, yeah, but what happened to Amanda exactly?
Also, Amanda, Jackie Swanson did her own stunt for that scene. She jumped off that and landed into the airbag.
Really?
Thought she just landed in the car and she's never acted again.
It's all for you, Richard.
It's like, well, she hasn't done too much. But...
Roll the cameras. We haven't set up anything yet. Just roll the cameras.
You did Superman. Can I be Superman too? Yeah, you could fly. Just jump off that window. Okay.
So we have Murtaugh in the bathtub. Also, who does a birthday cake as the start to their day?
I'm more impressed that was a ton of candles. And the more clustered candles you have in one spot, the hotter that thing gets. So I would have been surprised if that thing was halfway melted by the time they crossed halfway across the bathroom with how many candles were lit. I tried lighting like 10 candles once, like on a small cake. No.
I would have been mad that
that's why they did it in the bathroom. And if need be, they just chuck it in the bath.
Happy birthday, Slam.
They just used like one of those fake like wedding cake things, so it's just frosted styrofoam that they stuck candles in. It's like, you'll get the real cake later.
I would have just been mad that you brought food into the bathroom that we're expected to eat. Like, you don't bring food there into the bathroom.
You don't.
Yeah.
Immediately contaminated.
I mean, I highly doubt that they blew out the candles and then all sat down and ate a slice of birthday cake.
Well, then again,
all of them went to work.
Did Trish make the cake? Because if she did, that's your answer right there.
Right.
So we have Murtaugh meeting the rest of his family from here, and I do like the continued thing that runs throughout not just Lethal Weapon but the rest of the franchise is
stop apartheid.
You saw that magnet too?
Yeah. Apparently,
when
he got
was this film
backlash.
made?
Donner got backlash for having that there.
It was very prominent.
Yeah.
How do you get backlash for that? That's like siding with Free Tibet. Like, what?
I don't. People will argue against anything. Freedom, people living comfortable lives, treating humans like humans. I'm against it. Forget it. No, I don't know.
That's like someone being like, you know what, daylight saving time is good, and you're all wrong. It's like, no, we're generally all on the same page with this.
Maybe they're on board. They're just against magnets.
I hate magnets.
There should have been a sign.
It was too
Doesn't make any sense.
I don't know how they work. I hate it.
So we get the through line throughout all of the Lethal Weapon films, just the concept of aging and finding yourself aging throughout this. Like, time and time again, Murtaugh's line of "I'm too old for this shit." But aside from just them, like the ongoing joke of them physically being too old, but also throughout the films of him like watching his children grow up and him feeling like he's moving towards the end of his life and all of this stuff. I think that's why when I finally saw Lethal Weapon 4, it felt much more impactful, because I feel like it's 4 movies that the B story is always just the aging of characters that's going on from this.
Well, I also love because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but they keep the same actors for his family throughout all 4 films.
Yeah, if I recall.
Yep.
Yeah, so we actually we do, it's not just the main character. We get to see the aging of the entire family throughout, which I thought was a really nice touch. So many times in movies when they do like any sort of like sequel or even mini time jump, they tend to recast so that they get to cast who they want for that character at that age, but instead they just kind of kept they kept with those actors as they were aging to kind of, I think, hit to that point.
Or like they recast because it's like, oh, this character's going to be bigger in the next movie and we need a bigger star for this. So who's the hot new one? And it's like, oh, we're going to recast, and all of a sudden they're going to turn from like Joe Schmo, and in the next movie it's going to be like Colin Farrell is his kid or something. Well, not his kid.
So his daughter aged to a point where it's appropriate to say she's pretty. In the later films?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'll wait till we watch those.
I looked her up afterward, Rianne. I looked her up afterward just to see like what has she done anything else, and that's where I noticed that too. That she does have other acting credits, but largely it's Lethal Weapon that is her
the bread and butter,
her big thing. Yeah.
Yeah, the actors that kind of play Murtaugh's family don't have like a massive career after it, which was kind of sad. Although in this, they didn't have huge roles, so it was kind of tough to get a read on any of them.
Which also, I guess, makes it just so much more unique for this film of you don't have any other place. There's so many characters in this of like, so-and-so's this henchman. Oh, hey, he also played in this. Or, oh, hey, that's the guy from this. I look at his family and it's just, oh yeah, it's Murtaugh's family from Lethal Weapon. I don't know what else. It's just Murtaugh's family. So after Murtaugh, we get introduced to Riggs at his, I said beach house. It's a camper that's down by the water.
I've got beachfront property. What I meant to say was I have a moving piece of property on the beachfront.
So Riggs awakens with the mullet of kings and a beach camper, naked and smoking already. So yeah,
I like how he has the cigarette in his mouth as he's waking up, and it's already like pre-lit. It's like, can you imagine
surprised.
having like an automatic coffee maker, but for your cigarette?
Maybe it was his dog.
Like, I plan on waking up at 6:30 today, and I expect there to be a lit cigarette in my mouth at 6:29.
Yeah, that was the long dog run sequence. The dog was picking up a lit cigarette from the end of the beach. Also, I went back really quick, and yeah, that's like a straight 40 seconds of just, here's the dog. I don't know what I was doing at that point. Maybe I looked away for a long period of time or something, but that's like a 40-second intro of here's the dog.
They play catch, he feeds them, they go look at other dogs.
He's like, you are my dog, and I love you.
There was enough footage that at the end of the movie they could have done a montage of the dog.
So his beachfront property, we get introduced to Riggs, which, originally, aside from what you had mentioned, Nick, I was reading also about some intro that they were going to do of him in a bar fight where he ends up fighting off a bunch of guys. And then the bartender or something ends up telling him, like, you need to skedaddle. And he takes a bottle of whiskey and leaves. But again, like, this to open with that, I just feel like out of the gate, it's putting too much on Riggs of like, he's the loose cannon, like ready to fight everybody. This, at least, he's disheveled. He's kind of the odd man out of waking up smoking in his beach camper. But we don't know just yet of like the crazy, violent death machine Riggs that we get later in the film. So we get that Murtaugh got a call evidently a few days ago from Hunsucker, who is looking to get in contact with him, who is an old friend from his army days. And yeah, the scene of him being flabbergasted that his daughter is getting older as Rian introduces him to, this is my outfit for, was it the holidays or whatever it is?
New Year's outfit, yeah.
New Year's. And then we get the saxophone music and he wanders off from there. But he ends up going to the scene where Amanda ended up jumping off and they're getting a statement from one of the other, a prostitute that was there, Dixie, who saw her jump. And they don't really treat sex workers well as a police force in this. It's just like they have all of these mean comments and it's like, okay, now hit the road.
Yeah, and I thought it was unfair how they treated Dixie, considering she was so compliant and willing to help, and they're just like standing around making fun of her, and she's like, and it's just like, she witnessed this, she went up to you, she gave a statement, and like, and you guys are just being asses.
And they're not even getting the rest of the info out of her. It's just like, yeah, we're just going to make jokes at her expense. Okay, now beat it.
The 80s.
Yeah. So Murtaugh realizes the connection once he puts two and two together of Amanda being the one who jumped and then connecting it back to, oh, that's a relative of Mike's, which turns out to be his daughter that he knew back from his army days. So that's where all of a sudden all these threads start coming together.
Yeah, the woman who jumped is his daughter.
So the Riggs bust. We immediately get introduced to the fact that Riggs is a non-traditional cop. I think, did this character begin the idea of the loose cannon cop? Because I feel like this is really where it took hold.
I think probably.
Yeah, it's early enough. And I mean, I don't think I've seen a more loose cannon cop.
When did Cobra come out?
Where like he I'm skipping ahead like a few minutes in this sequence, but like when he does get kind of taken hostage with a gun at his head, and he is interchangeably saying to the other officers, shoot him and shoot me.
Okay, so actually I have an explanation for that. At the beginning of this scene, he is posing as somebody who's doing a coke deal, and they give him a pile of coke, and he does it.
That's true.
And he
true.
Scoops it, looks at it, and then rubs it into his mouth.
I had that thought, but then I wonder, versus snorting it, how quickly does that get into your system? Because I am
significantly quicker.
It has that numbing capability. If you do that, it'll numb your mouth, and if that works, then obviously it's the real stuff.
But that's topical. Snorting, is it getting into your bloodstream that fast?
Yeah,
it gets absorbed faster. Your gums are closer to your blood vessels.
Yeah, okay. Like when you do Nicorette. When you chew Nicorette for the nicotine, you're only supposed to chew it enough times for it to start tingling in your mouth, and that's your mouth telling you like it's absorbing the nicotine, and you're supposed to actually park it between your lip and your gums, and you're not supposed to just chew it for 30-40 minutes straight.
Yeah, the chewing just like activates it, I think, if I remember right. Yeah
Drug science. Learning is power.
So Riggs ends up doing coke there to test it out, and then he talks to these guys who are selling Christmas trees and cocaine, that he wants a deal of like throwing some Christmas trees.
It's snow, baby.
So I like how he trolls these guys before trying to arrest them. They're like, yeah, it's 100, and he's counting out just like $20, $40, and they're like, whoa, 100,000, and it's. Oh, well, I not on my salary. And then that's when all of this like goes wild, because he ends up doing I'm not going to, I could read your rights. I'm not going to read your rights. You know your rights, which already that's a problem. But then he shows off his badge, and then the guy starts shooting him he does this Three Stooges routine of he's crazy, and he slaps his own face and pokes the guy in the eyes and slaps the other one in the face. And then he just starts shooting these guys in a shootout.
Well, the guy does fire a shotgun at him first.
Yeah, which the guy fires a shotgun and hits his own guy, and then Riggs kills him. And then the last guy, as David said, takes him hostage, and that's when he's screaming to the rest of the cops, shoot him, and then tell the other guy, just shoot me, which I don't know if that's when the coke kicks in, because that's when he ends up hitting the guy and knocking him down and then holding a gun on him, and he's like shaking and his eyes are like wide, and then they're like,
That's true.
whoa, calm down.
I was
at
one point wondering, like, at the end, like when it all gets resolved and like he's like wide-eyed, like clearly feeling something. My thought to myself was like, is this the first time he's done coke in his life? And he just like, he was like, oh yeah, I gotta test it. And he's like, I've never tried this before.
Actually, I'm thinking, so just in general, undercover cops, how would that even work? If you end up like, oh, you're supposed to do you're part of a drug deal and you're undercover, and they're like, go ahead, test it to make sure that like it's real. What are you supposed to do? Do you
do it?
Do the
drug?
My understanding is that they kind of waive all of that as like as a hazard of the line of duty.
But then my question would become, if you're a cop and you've never done like coke, you've never done these drugs, how do you know what your reaction to it is going to be until you're undercover and they're like, do it, and he does it, and all of a sudden you're like, this does not mix with me.
Well, they probably... I mean, the police have drugs. I mean, it's just you can't obtain it from them.
They just have undercover officers just like microdosing cocaine just to get their bodies ready for undercover work.
Well, yes, but not in the facetious way that you mean it. I'm sure they probably like, look, if you've never had it before, we have, paramedics immediately here on standby. We need to observe how you behave under the influence of these drugs so that if and when you do have to do them in the field, you're ready for it, know.
Do this.
And I'm sure that would be part of your training.
They just do it like it's a like you go to the doctor to test for allergies.
Yeah,
it's just
like a charcuterie board of different drugs.
It's like
it's like this one we haven't even heard of here.
Bobblers, I don't know what this is. His eyes are completely black.
There's just like a guy. There's just like a chemist who's just making shit up. He's like, they're probably going to come out with something like this.
And if not, we should
arrest that man. Doctor, you've overdosed 50 patients in the last year. We got to spread these out.
They're real happy though.
So after Riggs comes down from that, we end up going back to his beachfront property, where we now see the depressed version of Riggs. He's drinking, he's staring at a photo of his wife. This kind of goes back throughout the rest of the series. And this is the scene that we were talking about at the top of the show of he takes out his pistol, he holds it in his own mouth, he's getting ready to kill himself, and then he kind of works past it, works through it, and it's like, that's subsided for now. He takes it back out, and then we move on to the police station from there. So already we know like Riggs is unstable, is massively depressed, is unhinged on his job, which is exactly what this town needs.
He does a really great job in that whole sequence. It's just like one or two shots, the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
He just does it in one take, like a long take. Not in one take, but
I mean,
I don't know how many takes he did.
During this time, like, I think Mel Gibson was a terrific actor, especially during this time. Like, aside from all the crazy, fun, loose cannon stuff of Riggs, I think all of these more serious scenes with him, oh God, I think all of these, I'm trying not to
He's choking up at how well he's acting.
You need a minute?
So, it was great.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really well acted scene. It's a really dark scene.
Yeah.
Going into this movie, it's not something I expected from it. Not having a real memory about this whole like suicidality arc of Riggs. So when we get like that long sequence of him kind of like preparing himself for it and stuff, it's really well acted. It's super, super dark.
So if he was planning that right there, what was his plan for his dog?
Well, he just found the dog in his shipping yard, so I mean...
But I mean, in this version, we don't know that.
No, but the door is open, so...
Oh, the door was open? I thought it was still closed to be like, oh my God.
I'm assuming.
The dog's going to be stuck in there with you for however long until somebody looks for you down at the camper?
With how heavy the scene is, though, it does make the end a lot more uplifting when he drops off the single bullet and it's just like, yeah, Murtaugh will know what this means.
Which if he doesn't, it will definitely be deemed a threat.
Yeah, it's like, here, go kill yourself.
Riggs, I got a 6-shooter. I need 5 more.
Hey, Daddy, some guy showed up at the house and he left a bullet with your name on it.
It's like the bow just accidentally slips off, and she was like, here, this was left for you. It's like, without
Riggs,
the
we're
bow,
back
this
on
is
the case.
menacing.
So we're back at the police station. We get Mary Ellen Trainor, who plays a psychologist from Monster Squad, from Die Hard. I always thought she had a much bigger role in this film, and then she's only in it for like 1.5 scenes.
Yeah.
When you like brought her up and like mentioned she's in other stuff, I was just like, wait, she, like, who? And I was like, oh right, yeah, she's in it for like 1.5 minutes. Like, it's a very short sequence.
Like, I remember like the psychologist character or like a therapist character being important, but I'm pretty sure Renee Russo, who comes in later in the series, is the replacement of that character, because I remember her being, I thought, like the psychoanalyst or something for the police department. So that might be what I'm thinking of when I was expecting more scenes of the character. But yeah, I mean, her whole job is like she's just here to say Riggs is unstable, Riggs is a danger, Riggs is crazy, and then Murtaugh to call her later and just say, hey, yeah, all of that's accurate. But instead, we have Murtaugh at his desk working on the Hunsucker case, and then Grand L. Bush walks in, who also is from Die Hard, if anybody knows him. You remember the 2 agents in the helicopter at the end? Johnson & Johnson, no relation?
Oh, yeah.
He was Johnson. So he walks in and he gives Murtaugh information on the case, and then Murtaugh sees a disheveled man with a gun in the station, so he screams gun and starts running to tackle Riggs.
I like how Riggs is looking around too.
Yeah, I like how Riggs pulls his
Where?
gun out as soon as he hears it, and he starts looking around.
I know Danny Glover just runs at him and just, gotta give Riggs prop on the stellar hip toss that just like didn't wait, just like classic like geese style like hip toss.
Just moves the arms in a circular motion and he just flips over.
Whoa.
I mean, also,
perfect.
kudos to Murtaugh for seeing a guy with a gun in the police station and immediately is just like, he's 50 years old, he has a family at home, and the first thing he does is sprint towards him to tackle.
I know, especially since he was bragging so much. He was like, 30 years in the force and I've never had so much as a scar, and just charges at people head on with a gun, with a loaded gun. It's like, wow, you're just real lucky, I guess. I mean, has this never happened to you before, and you're just super willing?
Yes, so he ends up tackling him, and that's how he finds out that that's his new partner. And then they compare guns subtly.
Subtly?
I used... There's an entire sequence of them taking their guns out as they're walking through the garage, and like, I use this, and it holds this much ammo, and it's this stopping power. Oh, I use a 6-shooter. Oh, all the old timers do. It's such like an odd scene of just them walking out and comparing guns, but it literally is like some sort of weird I don't know if it's like supposed to be a measuring contest or if it's supposed to be more of like a comparison of new mentality versus old mentality of,
I think the latter.
Clearly you have like the gun represents them, of you have a gun that is better but tends to jam and it has more risk to it, and you have a gun that's more reliable and all the older people would use that gun. Like, that makes more sense.
Murtaugh carries
Symbolism.
a gun that he doesn't expect to fire at people.
Yeah.
That's why it's unloaded the whole film. He just
I think
yells bang.
There's a little bit of both, because like we do, like, later on in the shooting range scene, like we do have like this kind of like Murtaugh trying to measure himself against Riggs, because there's this kind of theme throughout the movie that like Murtaugh has heard a lot about Riggs, and like, oh man, people say he's really, really good. Like, so I want to see how I compare to him. And I know in the parking garage, kind of Riggs is the one who, Murtaugh brings it up because he mentions like, oh, you got a lot of firepower there. So like in some ways, I do think like Murtaugh is trying to measure himself against Riggs because he does know he's getting older. So like, I feel like there's a little bit of both.
I think that it might even not be a. Oh, go ahead.
I didn't take it as like a comparing himself in admiration. I think he really didn't like the rumors that he heard. And it's just kind of like, so like, oh, you got a lot of, like, almost in a sarcastic way that you've got a lot there. And I mean, it is like, you just met the guy, he's your partner, you got to break the ice somehow. And I feel like this might have been the way that Murtaugh might have tried to do that. But
you ever do coke, Murtaugh? What? Just tried it this morning. Love the stuff. You want to do it again?
Coca-Cola?
So, yeah, because I mean, it might not even necessarily be a case of measurement against Riggs in general. It might just be of Murtaugh comparing of like his handling of police work or his handling of himself against a younger cop or like an up-and-comer or a well-known one from there. And like Nick said, it's breaking the ice of finding something to talk about. And if this guy's crazy, I have no idea what to talk about other than the fact that you carry a gun, right? Me too. It's either that or like shoes. So we get jumped to some boiler room somewhere, and we have Gary Busey as Mr. Joshua introducing Mendez and some goons to the general, which the general then shows Mendez how intense his crew is by telling Joshua to hold his arm over the top of a lit flame, which I get that it's supposed to be a show of like, this is how intense and dedicated my men are. But I feel like the intensity and dedication to causing themselves pain is not really what that group needs. I would be more impressed if he showed of like what they can accomplish and not so much of like, look how well they can hurt themselves. Like, yeah, me too. If I try any sport, like that doesn't mean that I'm a crack commando.
Later on in the movie, he's, why did you miss? Why didn't you kill him? My arm is burned, sir. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
I was like, this scene is probably really easy. Like, I feel like that was just like a Tuesday for Gary Busey. It's like, you want me to burn my arm on the lighter? Yeah, sure. I'm Gary Busey.
It's worth noting that this is pre-motorcycle accident Gary Busey still.
Yep. This is back just off, well, not just off, but this is post, I think it was an Oscar nomination for Buddy Holly's story. But I think this was during a time when his film career was dwindling a little bit. And I guess in interviews, he talked about how he was really interested in being a part of this just because he was hoping that Richard Donner and all of this crew would get like a great performance out of him. And this ended up kind of reigniting him into doing other movies from that point, which is nice because, I mean, he was an up-and-comer for years that ended up having a lot of great promise, a lot of good films. He had the nomination with Buddy Holly story that it's disappointing to see that not get carried into other things. Like we talked about back during Silver Bullet years ago, that I think he's a great actor, and it's a shame the punchline that he became post-motorcycle accident years later.
Yeah, there's a clear delineation, I think, and you see his performances in movies, and he, even though he's a killer in this movie, he still seems very level-headed, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
It was funny to me. I think it wasn't until the end of the movie when I realized, like, hey, Gary Busey and Danny Glover are both in Predator 2. And it's like almost their next movie.
Oh, I forgot Gary Busey was in that.
Yep.
Yeah. So we end up having a meeting between Hunsucker and Murtaugh. He ends up going to meet with Mike and lets him know that his daughter was poisoned before she jumped. So in this case here, it's, well, she killed herself, but it doesn't matter because she was going to be dead anyway, for what it's worth. And Hunsucker was telling him that he was trying to get a hold of Murtaugh the entire time to help get her out of trouble. But right now, we still don't know quite yet on what was the involvement. He makes it sound more like she was in with a bad crowd kind of thing of getting her out of trouble, and not, hey, I did some dirty dealings that put my family in danger. So Hunsucker says that Murtaugh owes him one because you know why. So you need to find these men and you need to kill them. And he says, like, I'm a cop. And he's like, I know you're a cop. Kill them all. Kill them. And he's screaming it. But then they change the camera angle and you realize they're in his bank and there's tellers and there's people standing there doing transactions. That, as somebody who worked at a bank at one time, I can't imagine somebody coming in to meet with my bank manager at his desk in the front floor and him like grabbing him by the coat and screaming, kill them all for me. I don't care if you're a cop.
When he starts to like cry and Murtaugh touches him, he's like, you know, get it together. Like kind of somewhat sympathetic, but also like you're a man, stop crying.
Oh, I thought it was like, Mike, we're in a bank.
Yeah, that's a little harsh. But yeah, then when you see the reverse and like, yeah, we should be holding it together here.
I'm also like trying to think. So like if they found the poisoner of Amanda, right, and they arrested them, would they get charged with attempted murder? Or like, because the poison didn't kill her. So it would just be attempted.
If they could prove and she admitted that she did that, yeah, they could charge her with attempted murder.
But I wonder if it would have been a case they wouldn't have been able to prove that Amanda like figured out she was poisoned and was going to die. Because then it that ups it a little bit from attempted murder. If they did something that was going to kill her, she figured it out, and then she like preemptively killed herself, because then it's kind of you drove them to it.
So, yeah, that'd be an interesting like trial to be like, it's like, is it attempted? Is it actually murder?
That would be an interesting trial if anybody was arrested in this film.
I mean, it's true. They don't use handcuffs in this. They just kill people.
They only use handcuffs once, ineffectively.
Just once, and I don't know why they chose to, and then it didn't matter anyway. But
so actually, speaking of handcuffs, this scene. Because after they leave the bank, they get a call to stop a jumper. And as they're headed there, they're passing a theater playing The Lost Boys, which was another one of the writer's films. So another little, I don't know if it's a nod or it just happens to be there. So Riggs goes up to talk with the jumper. And I like how he's talking with Murtaugh, and he's like, Roger, as in like affirmative. And Murtaugh's like, what? Thinking that he's saying his name. And he's like, 10-4. And then he just walks away from him. So Riggs works his way out to the jumper, tricks him into getting handcuffed by leaving a cigarette there and having him like leaning in to light it for him, and then handcuffing him. And then the guy doesn't want to jump at that point, and then Riggs decides, no, now we're jumping. Like, it's time now. We're both going to go. And they jump so hard that in the wide shot, they disconnect the cuffs and you see their hands completely apart. And then they must really realize it, and then they grab each other's hands again.
I didn't realize that when they jumped.
I definitely noticed that, and I don't understand, unless I guess they probably literally put a crane up to that top of that roof for that shot, because otherwise it's so close and you don't see where they fall. He could have faked it, But they must have actually jumped at that point, or I don't know, because why else? Why? I understand you're not handcuffed together for the safety of the stuntmen for when they hit or whatever. But if you can't see where they're landing, it's like, I felt like it was a very big. They only did it once, maybe, and that's the take they had.
Yeah,
because it's like very obvious to me.
Either that, the jumper pulled his arm with such force it broke the chain links.
Yeah, the prop master had like built these handcuffs in a specific way, and they just accidentally broke it. And they're like, "Well, we can only do one scene because the rent on this crane is, I know I was watching that scene and I got such like vibes from the Homeland from the boys, the jumper scene with Homelander where
jump.
Yeah, this woman's like going to jump, and Homelander's like, "Well, jump, do it." And she's like, "I don't want to anymore." It's like, "Well, now I'm gonna kill you."
I like that line Riggs had. At least it's like, make it look like I'm at least trying to help here.
Yeah. I mean,
boss is watching.
I mean, I feel like in hostage negotiation, that's probably how we would be reacting. Of like, hey, listen, my boss is really on me about this. At least make it look like I'm doing my job, so I don't get in trouble. You do you.
I mean, that's a super relatable way to go at it, right? When you're trying to talk someone down, it's like, dude, come on. Like, my boss is really all over me. Can you just like make it look good?
If I honestly get you down, we get a pizza party.
In the moment, I thought that was going to make him feel more sad and like he doesn't matter. He was going to jump at that point. That's the effect that it had on me anyway.
So yeah, so
and then
at
Santa
that point,
Claus is down there watching.
And Santa Claus snaps his fingers like, another one got away, and he leaves. So yeah, Murtaugh is pissed at Riggs for his handling over the jumper. And then they go into this other building, and Riggs explains how he wants to die every day, but keeps on living because of his job and because of he does his job well. So instead of reacting of like, okay, I understand, Murtaugh gives him his own gun, puts it in his hands and says, fine, then kill yourself. And then puts it to his head. And then Riggs starts to pull the trigger before Murtaugh finally like realizes, oh, he's going to call the bluff, and pulls it away. And then Riggs just immediately was like, well, I'm hungry. I'm going to go eat. And then just walks out.
It's an intense game of chicken.
Yeah, this was a weird handling by Murtaugh. But like, and there were, in the beginning of the movie, there's also this very strange thread where like no one believes Riggs that he's like suicidal and like suffering from like some really severe depression, and it's just like, oh, he's just trying to get psycho pension, as they call it.
Which I love that that's a term for them.
The like mental health wasn't a thing back then, so I mean,
yeah,
he's clearly suffering, and the psychologist that they have on staff is doing the best that she possibly can, but I'm sure she has like zero resources to try to help any of these cops. And he did
like the captain, like in that little sequence where she's like, he's not fit for duty, the captain's like, well, put him on duty anyway, and then if he kills himself, you'll know I'm wrong. I'm just like,
yeah,
wow, that's fucked up.
and Riggs pulled the trigger. Like if Murtaugh didn't stop him, he would have shot his head off. Like that's he wasn't trying to like call his bluff. He did call it, and he did pull it.
Yeah, because then that's when Murtaugh is like, you're not working for a psycho pension. Like, you're really crazy. Not depressed, just crazy. Which psycho pension, I feel like, is going to be the Street Fighter 8 M. Bison move. That's going to be his finisher.
Psycho pension.
The odd
he
thing
wheels
with
out and then just flips it.
The odd thing with the psychologist was that I think in her first scene, she's somebody says like, yeah, his wife died in a car accident. His wife of 11 years. And then later, like her second time appearing in the movie, she's like, something's eating at him. We don't know. We don't know what. I'm like, you said it earlier. He's depressed because his wife is gone.
Riggs, I'm going to need a ride
could
home.
It be?
So after this exchange, Murtaugh immediately calls the precinct and alerts the psychologist like, Riggs is suicidal. He is truly insane. And then they change the camera angle again as he gets off the phone and turns around, and Riggs is literally 10 feet away from him, like eating food, sitting on the trunk of the car. And it's like, wait, so you just had that conversation within earshot of Riggs is crazy. He's suicidal. Somebody needs to take care of this guy. Oh, hey, Riggs. Which I feel like probably wouldn't bother Riggs.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like from like when they first got partnered up that he was very much aware that everyone thought he was crazy. I mean, I think that I wasn't sure, but like there was at one point when Riggs, after he's now partner with Murtaugh, he says like he's on homicide, and I think before he was in narcotics, and I think they switched him, like they changed his division because of like his mental well-being,
right?
That he's just, you're too intense for drugs, time to move you to murder. You know, something to really lighten that mental load for you.
Really, they just didn't want him like just like taking coke at random times.
Is that perks of the job?
That evidence never made it to the lockers.
We got a pension,
Sarge.
We have a holiday party, all the coke you could have, whatever they're passing out.
So it was so funny. Is it right after this scene that Murtaugh brings Riggs home? I'm trying to remember the ordering.
No. So after this, they're headed to the house to investigate further and kind of follow up on the lead.
Right.
It's after that whole sequence that they go home.
Yeah, because now Riggs finds out that yesterday was Murtaugh's birthday, which I think this is the first point where they kind of have a break in the animosity and they start kind of connecting a little bit more. He finds out it's his birthday and he wishes him a happy birthday, and they talk a little bit before they get to the house. And I like how they're talking about, oh, should we get a warrant and all of this? And then the doors just open and a woman is leaving. And she's just like, go on inside, make yourself at home. And they're like, okay, don't need a warrant now. Who is like, clearly that woman's working with the rest of the ones that they come across in this like drug smuggling ring. Why would they just, anybody that's there, that's waiting in a car outside of the house, go on inside? Like, that's fine. I'll open all the doors for you.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was a porn shoot and they thought they were just meant to be there on set.
Because they looked at that mullet and they're like, oh, he's here for that.
Oh, yeah, he's the talent. And that other guy's probably his manager.
I kind of want to see like a modern remake of this where they do it. And like that was just like an Uber Eats driver. And it's just being like, does that count? Can an Uber Eats driver just invite me in? I don't know.
Because, I mean, actually, I wonder how that would work. Because as far as they know, it's not like, oh, they're in uniform or something. Just a person leaving the property that opens the door for them and says, oh, go ahead. As far as they know, they have now been granted permission into the premises.
It's the one Venn diagram crossover of police officers and vampires.
So actually, so that's what, if you can't get a warrant in time from the judge, you should call like DoorDash, ship it to the house, and then as soon as they open the door, just be like, door is open, he let us in. DoorDash and Law and Order coming next season. So, so they end up getting there. The woman lets them in. Why? We don't know. They flash their badges to these girls that they see through the window bagging cocaine. And I don't know why they didn't like wait until they were inside the house or wait until they were able to get like a better scope of things. If it was, oh, go ahead, you're invited in. The girls even look up and like wave at them of like, oh, hey, how's it going? And they flash their badges and immediately they like panic and start running. And then guys open fire on them. So Murtaugh shoots a guy and then kind of gloats at the fact that because I shot him in the leg, we could actually interrogate him now. And then that guy pulls a gun on Murtaugh, so Riggs has to shoot him a couple times until he falls in the pool and wraps himself up in that pool cover.
Yeah, I love the, I only shoot people in the legs. Like, a lot of people can die getting shot in the leg, too.
There's a lot of important stuff in those legs. I was trying to remember this scene because I hadn't seen it in years, and I was like, it would have been so funny if he was like, I shot him in the leg, and he got him in an artery of like in the inner thigh, and it's like, yep, guy's bled out, he's dead.
Yeah, just immediately it goes like full like Addams Family movie where it's just like shooting out
spraying.
Like 10 feet in the air arcs.
Like Dracula Dead and Loving It.
Yeah.
I always loved how in movies it's like, all right, I got to make it look believable, so I'm going to shoot you in like the shoulder. There's really no safe place on the human body you can shoot somebody without causing like terminal damage.
Yeah, I was like, I guess maybe
Butt
like
cheeks.
shoot him in the ass. Like,
yeah.
Just
that's really it. And even
and
then,
sideways,
still...
not dead on, because then that's going to go right through the rest of your pelvis.
Yep.
Well,
So they have to catch
profile,
me side profile.
Yeah, profile through the meat there.
that just makes me think of like Scream, where they have the scene where they're going to stab each other to like make it look like they were attacked by the killer. It's like, man, only safe place, just stab him in the butt.
I'm getting woozy here. And then plus I like how it's like, okay, we have to stab each other, and it's not like once, it's like 3, 4, 5, and it's like, okay, that's enough.
Should have gone in the butt, just butt stabs.
How great would have been? The cops show up at the end of Scream, it's just 5 stab wounds, both to their glutes.
It's like clearly the killer has some sort of like signature to kill.
Some really weird MO that takes a really long time for them to die.
Instead of the ghost face killer, they just call him the butt stabber.
I mean, unless it's the case if they saw he had a weapon and they knew the safest thing to get stabbed in, so they just backed up into him and started running.
It's like, twerk for your life.
Guard your vital organs. So that was the end of Scream. So Riggs is then touched that Murtaugh thanked him for saving his life, because I think it was at this point that Murtaugh kind of actually appreciates Riggs of, you're right, I gloated that I didn't kill the guy, and then I almost died if it wasn't for you being here. And they still, like, we're starting to see that connection that's happening, which I think is the same thing with a lot of other buddy cop franchises, where you just immediately think of the later films of, oh, they're best of friends and like all of these connections. And it's, well, this is still during the time frame when they're kind of still butting heads and they don't trust each other. Even towards like almost the back half of this film, Murtaugh still doesn't trust Riggs at all, but they still work together. But this is when Riggs gets invited to come to dinner.
Yeah, so I don't know why, but in my head I was just like, this kind of seems inappropriate. Like, you know, this guy's wife, like, I'm assuming, like, just died. And you're like, hey, come see my happy family. I'm sure this won't trigger you at all. I don't know why, but that was my thought. That, like, oh, man, this is really going to push him over the edge, where it's just like, my wife is dead. I want to kill myself. Here, meet my wife and my kids.
Look what you could have
Been
had.
married for years. Love them every day.
I mean, it's like you can only pander so much to that kind of, like, it's... Like, yeah, the guy's been through a lot of stuff, but, like, it's not like Murtaugh is going to fucking hide who he is. And
No.
Yeah, it's showing them human compassion of like,
Right.
You're still a person. I'm inviting you into our lives. Unless that was Murtaugh's goal of, you know, this guy's going to get me killed. We got to push him over the... It's like, what was that movie with Mark Paul Gosselaar, Dead Man on Campus, where they're like, we need to get the most unstable roommate, because if we drive him to something... then if he dies, we get straight A's the rest of the semester. Maybe that's what Murtaugh was thinking. I can go out for a while on vacation. We get rid of him. I'm safe again.
I mean, I'm also not saying like the movie was trying to do it. That was just my reaction. I was just like, oh God, this is not going to be good.
But I mean, it works out. Murtaugh's daughter, Rhiann, is instantly smitten with Riggs. Carrie and Nicholas freestyle rap about their sister liking Riggs. And then Murtaugh demonstrates an extremely weak rap game.
I like how the camera doesn't even show him rapping the entire time. All of his rapping lines was off camera.
I completely missed that he even rapped.
Yeah, it's like, oh, pan away, pan away.
It's all 80 yard.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. That means they added it, and they had the choice to make it as good or bad as they wanted to.
They just dub in like DMX.
Who at this time is not like 14.
Yeah, okay, maybe Run DMC.
There you go.
Grandmaster Flash. No, so at this point, Riggs displays how cool he is while they're hanging out on the boat outside, and Rhiann comes by and talks about how, I want to go out on this date, and her father says that she's still grounded because she was caught smoking weed in the house. So she starts the argument of, so I can have a beer, but I can't smoke weed. And he explains, like, weed is illegal, beer is not. And then Riggs chimes in of, like, when she says, like, well, it should be. And Riggs is like, yeah, I agree. And then he immediately is like, hey, don't be so hard on her. Like, give her a break. Like, let her go out and go on the date. He is completely unhinged, but also the most progressive cop of, like, legalize weed in 1986.
How many cops probably smoked weed anyway?
I mean he already did coke.
Yeah.
He's super progressive when he was on narcotics.
I mean, maybe, actually, like, all jokes aside, I wonder if that might be part of his mindset of working in narcotics originally. He sees so many, the difference between the people that are, like, selling hard drugs and doing these smuggling rings, and then it's, like, the amount of people that are getting put away of, like, marijuana possession. Not even, like, intent to sell it, just, like, no, they had, like, a blunt on them. They're getting put away. That could inform his idea of, yeah, it should be legal. That's fine.
That's right.
Like, and that time period, if you have like possession, like that's like 5 years.
Yeah.
Because that was like war on drug time when, you had minimum sentencing. So like, it's just funny thinking that, Murtaugh's daughter is smoking weed in the house when your dad's a cop. And it's just like, you could go away for that.
Riggs has killed people for less throughout this film.
It's true.
He killed one guy that was just selling Christmas trees. He might not even have been involved with all of this.
He just owned the lot.
What if that one guy on the back of the truck at the Christmas tree place wasn't involved with the drug ring? He actually just worked at the Christmas trees and thought the commotion was that he was stealing Christmas trees, so he just came out with a shotgun.
I mean, it could be. He was like, I got to defend my small business. I mean, I don't remember hearing Riggs calling out that he was a police officer.
I mean, he even specifically says, I can read your rights, but I'm not gonna. You know him. So...
I love that because he wasn't going to arrest any of them.
I don't need to say them. You're not going to be alive long enough to hear me finish it anyway.
The only rights I'm going to read you are your last ones. Let's go. So Riggs helps Murtaugh believe that he's trustworthy because he ends up saying, I still don't trust you, by immediately telling him a story about when he killed a man when he was 19. When he's like, I don't trust you. You're still crazy. Well, you don't trust me? Well, I was 19 and I killed a man and I made the shot that nobody else could. Like only 3 in the world could kill a man like I did. Also, I don't like your wife's cooking.
That post-Vietnam era was really... None of our troops came back okay.
Well, no. Also, there was no support system on the way back. It was, you're in a war that a lot of people disagreed with, and then you come back and it's like, whether you were there of your own free will or not, now you're ostracized and now you're not supported by both sides, governmental and citizen. So it was a lose-lose.
I think that was like really one of the first times when the United States had participated in a war that was just that the entire population or the vast majority of the population was against. I mean, this was also, I think, around the time when PTSD was even discovered, because I think PTSD entered the the APA's diagnostic manual in 1980. So, if we're talking about this came out in
86.
86. So like,
and would have
I
been
assume
written
the movie's
prior.
Yeah. So like, this is like right when it's like, oh hey, soldiers are coming back and they're super messed up, and like we don't know what's wrong with them. And this would have been, I mean, with Vietnam, right around the time when they figured out that something was wrong with them.
Yeah.
So like,
which like I feel aside from this, I mean, we could have a whole conversation on how much Vietnam informed films for like at least 2 decades, even before Rambo became Rainbow, or when it was still First Blood. Of the entire movie is just about a disillusioned vet coming back and having no support until he's egged on into violence. And then it's, well, you were our best soldier, and because of everything that happened here, we need to bring you home and make you do more soldier stuff. And then it turned into the rest of Rambo series. So, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff out there that we can get into if we were a more intellectual podcast. So, back to Murtaugh. He finds a birthday package in his house and opens it to reveal a police evidence folder with a yearbook and a tape called Amanda and Her Friends. And then I thought this was going to come back later. He looks at the yearbook, and in the yearbook, it shows Amanda Hunsucker, and then next to it, it shows Beverly Hunsucker. I think other than the fact that just it's like, oh, she has a sister. But then the sister is just a throwaway line later. I thought it was going to tie into something with all of this. And other than Mike just being like, hey, cool it. We're going to call off all of this because I have another daughter and I don't want something to happen to her. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that the Michael Hunsucker character didn't have more to add. Like, because we come back to him later in the movie with like a secondary interrogation. And I really thought there was going to be more to that character and what it was going to bring. But that kind of ends pretty abruptly.
I mean, it moves into like, hey, we need to get into the final act action stuff going on. So like investigation over.
With nothing figured out.
Nothing figured out. Who poisoned Amanda? We don't know. We don't care. We're going to fist fight and somebody's going to electric ShamWow. What's his name?
Mel Gibson. At the end of the day, all the bad guys were dead. We don't need to know the what and why. They're done. We got the who.
I mean, the DA is probably like, honestly, I have 100% wins because you don't bring me anybody.
DA, they just like have a post-credit scene of just an attorney in his office just twiddling his thumbs, being like, all the perps are dead. I don't know.
You bring me one slam dunk case that I can win, and now I can just say like, hey, I win 100% of my cases. Vote for me again.
He goes to see Judge Dredd later in life. He's like, this is pretty much already my life.
So Murtaugh ends up waking up the next morning with Riggs waking him up with coffee because his wife let him in the house. And the boys then decide to go to the shooting range, this is the scene you guys were talking about before, where they're discussing, in this case, they're now discussing the theory of, well, what if Dixie poisoned Amanda and then panicked because Amanda jumped? And now all of a sudden, because she jumped, it was any of the time she thought she was going to be able to do cleanup on the scene is now ruined. And I like how they're talking about, like, it's a pretty thin theory. Well, thin's my middle name. With your wife's cooking, I'm not surprised. I like how they're finally getting to the point where it's like, okay, now we're starting to see, like, the fun jabs at each other throughout the rest of the film. But this is when they compare targets, and Riggs has, like, perfect grouping. And then they do let's do another competition. And he sends the target all the way into the back with his pistol and then shoots a smiley face out on this thing.
I mean, this is also a great sequence for setting up later in the film for, like, we have that moment like a scene ago where Riggs talks about like, oh, I killed that man when I was 19. That was a great shot. And then we get to see it at the shooting range and be like, oh, he is a really great shot. And this is kind of setting up that like the first part of the big action finale where it's like thinking of Riggs as a sharpshooter isn't strange, right? Because the movie's been telling and showing us that like, yes, like this is a thing.
Yeah. And I mean, also then when it really comes down to the importance of like, Murtaugh, you need to trust me. Like, we can handle this. It's not like the power of friendship. I trust you. It's, no, you've shown me time and time again now, and from your stories, that you're not BSing me. Like, you are the greatest shot I know. So I I still have some problems with that scene when we get to it, just because I feel like that whole action sequence is fun, but feels wildly out of place with the rest of this film in terms of aesthetics. But we'll get to there because in the meantime, they head to Dixie's house to try to bust Dixie, and all the kids are there just asking questions and screaming that they're going to go bust Dixie. And before they do, the house explodes. Clearly the kids work. We never really check any of them. Yeah, like, a bunch of kids hanging out by a car across the street. They already know about Dixie. They know 2 cops are going over there. They're not involved with setting these charges.
Feels very like Damien.
So yeah, it's like a Children of the Corn situation. All of them just standing around one kid, Alfred, who's... So yeah, Riggs explains that the explosive trigger that they find was something that he saw back in the army, and then they start grilling the kids for info about they saw somebody at the house checking the meter earlier that day. And I like how the other friends give away this kid immediately of like, what's your name? Don't tell him your name, Alfred. Well, how old are you? And they're like, one kid covers Alfred's mouth and then it's just like 6. So they are terrible at this.
It's like they've seen it happen. Like they've seen like adults or something like try and like not talk to the police, but are clearly just children and are just messing it up entirely.
Which also, I mean, even the kids are very leery about the cops, and they're even asking them questions about like you kill people and all of this stuff. That I don't know if it's just supposed to be like, oh, a Shane Black funny scene about the kids, or if it's just like 1980s. It's starting to be the point of people are starting to be leery of the police force. It's all of the things that they're seeing out in like California or seeing in all of these states, that it's a little bit of a commentary on what's going on there, even though they ask and Murtaugh kind of looks around of like, I don't know what to say to this kid. Like,
well, I thought it was funny how like the black kids asked the 2 black cops if they shoot black people. Like,
yeah,
just like friendly fire, man. Like, what a way to make them feel so much more uncomfortable.
Well,
and
that's
of course,
when
the
he doesn't know
racist in
what
the
to
background
say.
is the one like chuckling so much through the whole thing.
because that's when Murtaugh just kind of looks around and it's like, hey, how about we get these kids some ice cream? And then they promise ice cream to get info out of Alfred, and Alfred explains that it was a tall, white, blonde guy with an army tattoo that looks exactly like that one, and he points to the Special Forces tattoo on Riggs. So now they know, like, oh, it's somebody from, like, that Riggs might know from his past, or there might be some connection to these army forces that Riggs is aware of from there.
It's pretty convenient that he had the exact same tattoo.
A stroke
Also,
of luck.
good on that kid for recognizing like that tattoo specifically, because I saw that
sniper eyes.
I just rewatched this movie literally 2 hours ago. I couldn't tell you what that tattoo looked like in a lineup.
I didn't even know
me
you
5
had one.
tattoos, I'd be like, I think there was a snake and a knife. There might have been an apple. I might have added the apple.
I wonder if it's a continuity thing too. Like, did he have it the whole time? Because I swear I never even noticed the tattoo on
Well,
him.
he's shirtless and naked in the first scene, so we could find out.
I wasn't looking for a tattoo, okay?
No, I'm just saying we could find out if we wanted to.
That's true. I was
It was
insinuating
on
I was
like
looking at something
his
else.
right arm, right?
His right arm.
Yeah, it was up right bicep.
Yeah, because when they mentioned his tattoo, I was just like, wait, he has a tattoo?
It's just like a whole sleeve, and you're like, wait.
It's like, wow, it's a big tribal thing.
All of a
Wow,
sudden,
that's
it's
kinda weird.
touching
Up
his
on his
chin,
neck,
up his
up the
neck.
side of his
Yeah.
face.
Oh man, can confirm. Beginning of the movie, he does not have a tattoo.
Oh, wow.
He does not
really?
have a tattoo.
He does not have it in his introduction scene.
Damn, that is a huge that's a big error, especially when it's such a focus in the script. Anyway,
I wonder if he has it in the other movies too.
I was gonna say, it would be kind of weird if he, like, between movies,
Become-
hey Riggs, what happened to your tattoo? Got it removed. You got your Army Special Forces tattoo removed?
Too many bad memories.
I wasn't proud anymore.
Wasn't proud of the men I killed there, but I'm hellish proud of the men I killed over here.
He has like a new tattoo, and he gets a cover up.
It's just
Poor
you
O'Malley.
shooting a guy.
I've moved on from the Army. I like Space Marines now. But yeah, I mean, also the way that he reacts of like a tattoo like that, and Murtaugh looks at Riggs and he's like, just like that. I thought he was going to be like,
Just puts
pulls a
cuffs
gun
on
on
him.
Riggs. It was Riggs. You knew about the triggers. You knew about this. You knew about Dixie. So no. So
they would explain
Murtaugh,
how the bomb went off just before they got to the house.
Yeah. Or if he's just like, oh, go on ahead, Murtaugh. Like, I have to tie my shoe real quick. So they head back to the Hunsucker estate, and Murtaugh grills Mike now that he has more information, and asks what was he into that got his daughter killed. So Mike explains that he worked for Air America as a CIA front in the war, and they were stopping heroin shipments and killing everybody involved, which is great, until his shadow company decided they were going to get together and haul all of the heroin after the war, run by ex-CIA and mercenaries, and bring that into the U.S. So it was, we took them all out as part of this secret unit, and now we're going to use all of that and take over the drug trade ourselves. So they can't kill Mike because his bank is the front for the money. So that's why they've been going after his family, and that's why they went after his daughter. So Murtaugh explains he's going to burn everything to the ground before a helicopter flies by and ruins Mike's eggnog, and Murtaugh rubs it in before he dies. Which I like how they're having a party in what I assume is California, and he's walking by, and because it's Christmas time, it's hard to tell because it's California.
Yeah.
Because everything is still like palm trees and sun. Yeah. But he's walking by and he just has like a bunch of cartons of eggnog, and he just lifts like a quart carton of eggnog and he's just drinking it out of the thing and then gets shot by the helicopter.
He deserves it if he's going to have that much unrefrigerated eggnog there.
I mean, there was a lot of it there.
Just warm eggnog. And then he gets
also,
shot.
like, I don't understand who just has, like, that many cartons of eggnog. Just,
well,
like,
I think he was having
around.
a party, but then still, it's like, why do you just have a bunch of cartons of eggnog here when there's a party outside?
In your office.
Yeah.
It's like
it's backup eggnog.
You always see them executives with, like, the decanter filled with, rum or whatever the hell that executives drink in their decanters, because
where they pour it out into, like, another
fucking
crystal thing.
Yeah, I never understood why executives can have alcohol during business hours and it's okay for them to have it, but if I have it, it's alcoholism. I mean, whatever. But yeah, maybe that's just this thing. It's just like Christmas time. I want 6 cartons at the ready at all times.
He's that gif of that one little kid with the glass of milk, just like pouring it all over his own face.
I mean, to be fair, like Christmas time, I do get pretty excited about like soy nog. So
they do have pumpkin eggnog now that I was pretty excited of. Like, hey, Halloween's my favorite season. But if I can somehow have pumpkin eggnog, I'm willing to bridge that gap going into the holidays. So I like how as he's like dying or once he's dead, Murtaugh, you think that he's like going to check for a pulse or help him. And he climbs right down next to his head. And he's like, yeah, like this is better than what you deserved. And then moves on from there. It's like, oh, so he's just going to gloat over his friend who just died. But instead, Riggs is now firing wildly at a helicopter 200 yards away with a pistol, which, despite being such a great shot, he is not taking down a helicopter at that distance unless this is the first Halo.
It kind of reminded me of like the Tony Stark raid in Iron Man 3.
Yeah. So, yeah, we have the attack that kills Mike, which I guess they don't need the the bank anymore. And then they take off. But now the general decides to turn up the heat on them because they have 2 cops who now clearly know everything that's going on if they've met with Mike and they've been doing this investigation. So the general wants them dead. So as Riggs is going and investigating, kind of asking other people as far as like, do they have any lowdown on Dixie? Do they have any information on like all that's going on with Amanda? Joshua shows up in a car and guns down Riggs and assumes that he's dead, but he survives from a vest, and they plan to use Riggs being dead to plan a trap.
Not just like any vest. It's a bulletproof vest.
Oh, yeah.
A life vest.
It's a cardigan.
Thanks for asking.
So they decide to plan a trap. They get a call that a blonde was seen outside Murtaugh's home, and then they realize that, that might be the same guy. So they rush back to Murtaugh's and find a blonde.
A man or a woman?
So they end up rushing back to Murtaugh's and find that Rianne has been taken somehow without anybody noticing in the house, because they burst in and they see the note and whatnot. And then all the family comes down, like they start walking downstairs and they all act surprised of like, what's going on? And it's like, wait, so none of you, if this guy came into the house to leave a note and took your daughter, nobody heard this? Was everybody upstairs during this timeline?
Well, I don't think the daughter was home, right? Don't they doesn't dispatch call it in that it was like
that's
three houses away?
Yeah, she was with
her
boyfriend. He's
yeah,
dead.
she was like sneaking out
the boyfriend
because she wasn't supposed to go on the date, and then she kind of goes anyway.
And she's dating Mr. Joshua.
Which
what twist.
Well, she said that because didn't she say that her boyfriend was like blonde with the dimples, and Murtaugh makes fun of that, and then he realizes that's the guy.
No, he just realized
he says, not dimples, it's holes. When he turns sideways, I could see through his head.
Well, yeah, because dispatch. I'm trying to think because when dispatch calls, Murtaugh says, "Oh yeah," and he probably has he's blonde with dimples, right?
And they're like, "How did you know?"
Yeah, because she was sneaking out with her boyfriend.
Who has?
Yeah,
dimples.
I thought that was.
No, it's not Joshua.
I thought the reveal was that it was Joshua.
No, he's just remembering what how his daughter described, and he just said it as a joke, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, no, that's him." Because why would Joshua be going after her before they're even involved, sniffing around,
But then the question becomes,
knows what her boyfriend looks like, so and Joshua's clearly 30 something.
But then the question becomes, what happened to the boyfriend then?
I thought, didn't he get killed? What was dispatch?
Yeah, they said they found a body.
Yeah, they found
a body.
Yes.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Oh,
that would have been wild
Poor
to me to learn that she was dating Joshua.
They finally cave and they're like, "Fine, you can bring your boyfriend around," and then it's like a Spider-Man moment of all of a sudden Gary Busey shows up with her.
He's got the tattoo
Christmas
on his arm.
Dinner.
Yeah. Oh, also,
hey, can I call you Dad?
He does have his tattoo when he's naked at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, apparently the clip that the section I was looking at was not entirely clear, but it seems like maybe it's further up on his arm than when he was standing where I was looking.
Maybe it's the special edition where they went back and they CGI'd the tattoo onto him in all scenes.
Even on top of his clothes, like it's an anime or something.
What if it's a temporary tattoo that he puts on every morning? Yeah, special forces. We find out Riggs was never in the army.
He's one of those guys.
Just goes to the range all the time.
Lethal Weapon 2, Stolen Valor.
Goes to the Army Navy store and just buys camo.
So Joshua calls the police to ask about Riggs and is told that he was shot and killed. So they consider that's a wrap of great, one down, and we got Rianne, so we'll get Murtaugh next.
I love
Which
that
I think
officer's
is stupid.
Smug smile after he tells him, got him.
I mean, I get how I'm calling on behalf of the news. I'm just calling in regarding the thing, and they were just so officer shot and killed. Just how easily that information was given out.
Yeah, normally that's super hard, and normally the journalist would have to have a really good relationship with that cop to just get that kind of free flowing information.
Yeah, I'd expect some kind of fight, and that would have been my red flag. They told me he was dead way too easily.
It's also good. How is he so sure that wasn't a reporter and just gave the information out? And then he acts like he was I got him with that smile after he hangs up. It's did you know?
Oh yeah, the smile. The smile is weird. That he's yeah, I knew that was the bad guy. It's maybe you should have been recording your calls if you knew they were going to call and ask about it.
Unless they were just telling anybody that called.
Yeah, but the smile reveals that.
Have you seen my sister? Officer Riggs was killed. Yeah, that's fine.
Or maybe he just smiled every time it happened because he's just haha, I think this is kind of funny.
Well, he talked about he doesn't have a wife at home, so maybe this is the only human connection he has. He's just talking to people on the phone.
We didn't see the other. We didn't see the other 9 news agencies call and see him smile at that as well.
He just really hates Riggs, and anytime he can openly admit that he's dead is the highlight of his night.
Not only is he dead, but they found that his biceps are smaller than mine.
There's a cut scene where he's called in the police chief's office and fired for leaking sensitive information to the press.
I also like the idea that Riggs and Murtaugh are yeah, they think you're dead. This gives us the advantage. It gave you no advantage in the slightest.
Oh, it gave him a lot of advantage.
Not even
the next scene it did.
I have a problem with that scene, but we'll get to that.
So this is the scene that, like I said, it's a fun action sequence when they get out to the desert to make the exchange for Brienne. But after so much of this movie being all of this kind of dark, misty, nighttime in the city with all of this stuff going on, an investigation around Christmas time, and all of a sudden we just get, boom, bright day at noontime, sun in the sky, middle of the desert, blue skies. It feels so jarring from the rest of the film, because then the next scene we go back to having it all like dark and like back in the city and all of this, that it always just seemed out of place to me.
I don't know.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you feel that way too. I didn't feel that either. Behind the scenes, I think they ran out of money, and this was the cheapest way that they can do this kind of encounter.
Well, also probably the easiest way they could have a helicopter involved to that level.
Mm-hmm.
So Riggs and Murtaugh plan to get Rianne back, and they go out to the middle of the desert, and Riggs explains like he'll have to kill this time, like Murtaugh needs to be ready to shoot a guy. And like I said, like I never loved the desert sequence, but I do like the action of it all. So Murtaugh drops off Riggs ahead of time to get into position with his sniper rifle, which, going back to what we had said before, they now trust each other. We've established that Riggs is a great shot. So the idea of him firing from a distance and shooting like directly around his daughter is something that he's willing to like agree to now, just because he knows and trusts Riggs in that regard. So meanwhile, Joshua's team arrives with their cars and a helicopter, which I did like the idea that the helicopter at first I thought was just an escort, but then it's like it was flying just low enough that it was constantly kicking up a dust cloud to kind of like make it more difficult for the visual. So I don't know if they were doing it intentionally just to like hide the number of cars, or if it was just literally to just make it look cool.
I thought most of the dust
and it
was
wasn't
from
a tactical
cars.
thing.
Yeah.
What?
I thought most of the dust was from the cars kicking it up.
Oh, I thought it was from the chopper blades.
It's a mix of both, because I mean, it's the cars are going to make a dust trail no matter how hard you try not to allow that, and the helicopter is only going to make it worse.
Yeah.
I think it's just a rule of cool. It just looks cool to see a convoy come up like this, and we haven't really seen it much like that.
I thought they were just doing like a Furiosa thing and trying to make it look like there were way more cars coming than there were.
Yeah. So all of them get out of the vehicle, and one of the mercs is Sven Ole Thorsen from The Running Man, the right-hand man of Richard Dawson. When he's like, "What steroids make you deaf?"
See
and
the
then at
ice
the end
guy?
of the movie,
Or
he's like,
not ice. He has lights on him. Is he the one with lights on him?
No. He's the like security guard that is that works at the studio next to Richard Dawson. Richard Dawson is constantly berating him throughout the movie, and then at the end, it's like. Richard Dawson calls him for help, and the guy's like, must be the steroids, and he just leaves him. So yeah, that's that guy. So Murtaugh shows he has a grenade and threatens to take them all out together, which maybe I just don't understand because of video games over the years, just how wide a blast a single fragmentation grenade would have, that he pulls out the grenade and all of them are like, he has a grenade. They're in cars like 50 feet away. How big a blast are they expecting from this thing?
I mean, I don't know anything about grenades, and I'd imagine if you're behind the car, if it's like a fragmentation grenade, it's the car is going to protect you.
Yes,
yeah.
But the grenades are lethal by two different ways. It's the force,
the concussive blast,
the concussive blast, and then obviously the fragmentation of whatever's inside it. The shrapnel getting shot out.
Yeah.
I don't know what their range would be. I'd imagine it's a lot smaller than they're trying to make it out to seem like, because they're acting like it's some missile that's going to explode and deal like a mushroom cloud when it's just a single frag grenade. But
yeah, I think it would take out a third of the guys if you were, depending on where you threw it.
Well, he made it sound like I'm taking us all out of like, I'm going to let go, not I'm going to throw it.
Right.
No,
I was thinking he had it was like C4 the way that he was talking about it.
So they call his bluff, and Gary Busey shoots him in the shoulder, and then they find out that it's not a real grenade, it's just a smoker, and it goes up. So Riggs opens fire and takes out the guys holding Rianne, who moves the dead body and takes off in the car. But unfortunately, Riggs is then captured by the general, and Murtaugh's station wagon is completely destroyed before he is also caught. And then a little bit away, Rianne also gets caught again by the helicopter. So
just to add to what we previously, so fun fact,
this scene provides nothing. They all end up exactly where they were, except now they're caught.
Oh, no, I was going to say, so the fun fact is that the lethal effective range of a fragmentation grenade is 50 feet.
Holy smokes.
Which, so my note that says I highly doubt a frag grenade could do like 50 feet of damage is literally the exact amount of damage that a frag grenade can do.
Yeah, apparently an M67 fragmentation hand grenade has a casualty rate of about 50 feet.
Does that include the frag, the actual bits of grenade, or the concussive like force though?
I mean, it's just talking about like it is lethal to that distance.
Okay.
So if you are within,
we need more
50 feet.
We need more research.
You could likely die.
And it's scary to see the inside of those things because they're just lined with just like little metal cubes lining the entire rim of the inside of the ball. And then just imagining like 200 pellets going faster than the speed of sound in all directions is fucking terrifying.
Did anyone else have a problem with they don't exactly show you the distance that Riggs is away, but it's far enough away that he's got a large rifle with a scope. The general arrived in the car with everybody. Riggs is so far away. I don't think
he was in the car. The way I had seen
Isn't he the
it,
one that told her to get out?
No, that was Joshua.
I thought that was Joshua.
Oh,
I think the general stayed behind in case.
So we never so
there
we
was
never
an ambush.
saw him anywhere.
Which then goes even further to what you had said before of, hey, we can plant a trap if they think that Riggs is dead. Clearly, Joshua might have. The general didn't. If the general was like, I'm going to scout the area and go around the perimeter just in case they have their sniper rifle.
Yeah, that's what I was like. They'll think I'm... I mean, but also like the whole idea of Murtaugh being like, oh, we have an advantage now. They think Riggs is dead. I mean, they have the backing of the entire police force. They could bring as many people as they wanted.
They could have had 12 snipers in there.
I think
it would have been harder to hide, but
I read it as they've got a loan with this because they need to kill these guys and his daughter's going to be, it's like we can't do bureaucracy. Like,
well, plus too, if they showed up with like an equal or greater armed force, they probably would have hurt Rianne or just turned around and not even bothered meeting them at that point.
The logic of it worked for me just because I'm like, they're desperate to get the daughter back in one piece.
But also the fact that they were told where to go when it's nighttime, and then it's daytime when they get there, and then the other guys show up. They're not already there. So it's like, realistically, when they found out where they were going to be meeting, they could have called their people in the police force and been like, send 15 snipers, get them all lined up like over in the bushes ahead of time.
Yeah, but
like have three helicopters in the wings.
Well, they didn't know if they were being set in a trap. Like, I like where your head's at, but realistically, if they did do that, they don't know if where that specific location was, if it was already a pre-established base for them. You would obviously see all of the reinforcements coming. So that's why they definitely had to go lone wolf style. And you even see Riggs like barrel roll out of the moving car to get into position as Danny Glover's driving, because if they were to see him stop, they would have known that, they're setting up some kind of ambush point or counter ambush.
Right, but they could have done it like the night before.
That's what I mean. They didn't know if there were anyone there already. I think that if they were to try to set up something in advance, they would have gotten caught.
And I mean, if the general's already suspicious and was canvassing or looking for backup, then they would have probably seen that police, we can logic this to death if we want to keep talking about it.
One police helicopter with a giant magnet, so as soon as they all drive in, they grab one car and leave.
I thought you were going to use the magnet to capture all the bullets in midair.
Wait, no.
I don't know how
that's
magnets
a better
work.
idea.
I do feel better about the scene,
imagine if that's what they did. Murtaugh walks out and he takes out a vest that's just all magnetized. All the bullets immediately just stick to it so they don't shoot him.
Well, no, they used the opposite force magnet, so it just repels the bullets. Repels all of the bullets.
When Danny Glover when he's being captured, I first thought like these guys are horrible shots. Like the dust around him is getting kicked up with all these bullet shots. And then he just stops and gives up.
Yeah, he runs away for a few too many steps, then it seems okay.
Well, then they light up the station wagon the way they do, and it's so you hit that station wagon, but you missed him standing closer to you.
It was very classic plot armor.
So they should have just lit him up right there.
just
Leave the weapon franchise be damned.
Just RoboCop him.
And after every mission, they reset him back to 5 days before retirement. We're almost there. 5 days before retirement for 20 years. So they end up getting all of them captured. They end up back in kind of under the nightclub in this base. And Ali Yong, also from Die Hard, and Joshua decide to torture Riggs with this electric shock sponge treatment as he's hanging up by his arms with his feet in the water, and he's just shocking him with like the car starter with sponges on the ends of the prongs.
Which Mel Gibson really sells it, honestly. Like, he seems like he's in horrible pain.
I saved one sound clip specifically to send to you, Dean, because when he's doing all of his like screaming when he's getting electrocuted, there's one point where he makes the noise that Raiden does when he flies across the screen. Because he gets shocked and goes... Such a niche thing that I know you will appreciate. So meanwhile, the rest of the crew is beating Murtaugh up and literally rubbing salt in his wounds. And then the goons threaten Rianne to get information out of Murtaugh. So Riggs plays dead in order to get Al Leong close, and then wraps his legs around him and breaks his neck, and then rushes the other room to free everybody. And I like how he goes berserk, kills everybody, and then just starts screaming, "Who's fucking next?" in the middle of the room. He is like the 1980 cop Wolverine.
Yeah.
That's true. At that
rage.
time, I feel like he would have made a great Wolverine.
Yeah, and yeah.
I do also think it's funny because of the very specific way that he was tortured. He has like no scars or cuts on him. So like I just kind of put myself into Murtaugh's head for a second and being like, man, did they do anything to him? Like, I'm over here getting beaten up and he was just fine.
It was psychological torture. They played the Village People on repeat.
He's dying internally.
They just turned on Kraftwerk's Autobahn and left it on for the entire 14 minutes. Yeah, that intro goes for a while.
He screamed the same way as if he was being electrocuted.
So now they end up emerging into the nightclub and they have a shootout before escaping. We have a lot of films with like nightclub danger sequences between, we were talking about like Mortal Kombat and I think
what was it? Spraying bullets.
Well, the entirety of Roadhouse. So we end up.
What's it? Beverly Hills Cop. He's the other loose cannon cop that actually happened before this one. But there was a big like strip club sequence in that movie too.
Yeah, we have also 48 Hours. Nick Nolte is very loose cannon in that one as well. I don't recall timeline wise where 48 Hours and another 48 Hours shows up, but another buddy cop one.
Though I was thinking another good like strip club / nightclub escape, Universal Soldier. You know, that was
it was big during the time.
Damn, I don't remember.
I'm sure there's a sequence in Cobra somewhere that doesn't take place in a metal foundry. So Joshua gets outside and GTAs somebody's car because he immediately just like runs out with a gun, grabs a car door, opens it, drags the lady out. And I like how he's carrying a gun and the lady is still fighting him for the car. And then Riggs stands in the center of the road and begins opening fire on Joshua's car and then tries to chase him down. And I like how Murtaugh starts running and then just gets tuckered out and just lays against the lamppost and just like gives him directions on go cut him off at the freeway, take this route, you'll get there faster. And then he just kind of takes a breather and then he goes back to go find the general.
Throughout this sequence, until his daughter was delivered to like, you know, the regular city cop for protection, I was confused because, you know, I didn't realize they were in the club at first. They're just some at a random warehouse. And I'm like, why do you keep dragging your daughter towards like danger? Like all this stuff going on. Then I realized, they just have to, they're escaping. They have to get out of there somehow.
Yeah, the backside of that club looks real different.
Yeah. So Riggs takes out Joshua's car, so Joshua gets another. And I like how he opens the car door and says, "Mind if I test drive your Audi?" And then throws the guy out of the vehicle.
He didn't wait for an answer.
What if he did? What if it's like,
no, go for it.
I'll give you the option. So Murtaugh catches up to the general and says, "No way you live. No way." Shoots the driver. The general drives into the path of a bus, gets T-boned by the bus. His car gets thrown, and then he ends up still alive as a bag of grenades in his car goes off and blows the whole thing up. And Murtaugh laughs while still wearing his Die Hard costume.
You never see any other grenades in the movie except for the desert scene. I thought it was weird on how he just happened to have like an entire satchel full of them in the passenger seat.
Yeah.
I think they knew I would watch this movie and think, finally, like, the car is exploding for a good reason. It's full of explosives.
Yeah. That's a good point. We actually literally see
quote
it.
Unquote.
It was funny though. The car flips over and it's just like bags of cocaine or heroin and grenades. And I'm like, this was a weird combination to bring with you.
What if he just puts his
right.
face into the cocaine and then all of a sudden just hulks out of the vehicle and starts running away?
That's not how that drug works, General.
Well, it's not the writer's fault unless they've done cocaine. So that's why the Writers Guild actually brings all the writers in and has them try a tackle box full of drugs to get them ready to write scenes with these drugs.
I was going to say, Tim, like 1980 writer's room, they haven't done cocaine. I mean,
true. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, it's probably like in a little dish by the door when you walk in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those like butler statues and it's got the cocaine on it.
It's like, oh, is that a dish of Altoids? No, it's just hard-packed cocaine.
Here, crush it up with this lighter.
So they realize that if Joshua got away, he's probably headed back to Murtaugh's home. So they get the car. They leave Rianne with one of the cops, and they take off back to Murtaugh's house, expecting to catch up with him for some vengeance. Joshua kills the two cops that have been placed outside Murtaugh's home and opens fire on the house before kind of going in. I like how he goes in, and he finds a sign saying, "Dear bad guys, no one here but us cops, sorry." And then a cop car rams through the front of the living room.
I feel like if they were setting up a trap like that with the note, that those two cops should have been way more attentive.
Yeah. Unless they didn't tell the two cops about it.
Yeah. It was just like, if you're setting up a trap, you should be waiting to spring the trap.
This is all part of it. They knowingly sacrificed those two cops, so when it came time for the fist fight, they can say, "He got two of ours. Let this happen." And they had carte blanche to just have this fist fight.
Sarge, send those two cops no one likes.
Yeah. It was like, honestly, Tim, as you were saying that, all I could think of is Godzilla, King of all monsters, with the "let them fight."
So they called, they're like, "Send that cop that smiles on phone calls." So they decide the most sensible thing to do here is for them to now capture Joshua, take his gun, and then have Riggs fist fight Joshua on his front lawn in this kind of like shaky cam water fight with the hydrant blowing water everywhere.
I like how it's like Riggs is like, "You want a shot at the title?" And he's like, "Yeah, let's go."
Yeah, that's a great line.
It is cool. I mean, the entire end of this film is like rule of cool. So Murtaugh gets all the cops to like form a circle, and they just like, the helicopter shining its lights and the cars are shining its lights. It's like the end of Rocky V. Like, they're just going to have all of this crowd while they watch a cop brutalize a perp in front of them. And Murtaugh explains it's okay because he killed two of our own. And Riggs wins, but Joshua steals a gun, so Riggs and Murtaugh open fire on him, and it, again, really giving me Die Hard vibes with how this ends from this.
Oh yeah, I mean, to be fair, this whole fist fight, I was just like, this has to be the inspiration for Lionheart. Like, this must have been where it came from.
Is that Van Damme?
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen that one.
You will.
Oh, it's a good one. Well, it's one of the three you should watch of Van Damme.
There was a shot missing from the fight of one of the cops going around taking bets from the other cops.
So they end up killing Joshua and saving the day. No perps arrested. everyone's dead. Never solved Amanda, really. And put a button on it.
Yeah, it's just funny because Riggs wins the fight, right? But he like chokes him out. And Murtaugh's like, oh, snap his neck. And he's like, no, it's not worth it. And he puts him in handcuffs. I'm like, what do you mean not worth it? You've killed like 40 people in the past 3 days.
Yeah, David.
It's about growth. And that's why it's like watching what movie, or it's like watching Breaking Bad, on where like the bad kid eventually becomes good and the good guy eventually becomes bad. And Murtaugh goes along with Riggs's crazy ass idea to like drop me off in the middle of the desert and I'm gonna shoot down all the guys. And Murtaugh wouldn't normally have done that. He would have called the cops, and it was Riggs that told him probably like, no, we gotta do this on our own. And then
but like Riggs was just running down
I was just gonna say that,
middle of the street in LA.
I was just
firing an automatic weapon, and then he's like, no, it's not worth it.
He was about to kill him.
It's like, that's too quick. It's too quick.
What if he meant it as a joke, and then he turns back and punches clean through his head like Story of Riccio?
Up through his
I mean, regardless, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because he, Joshua steals a police officer's gun and then gets shot by both Riggs and
It would have been
Murtaugh.
great if all the cops finally took that as the opportunity of like, now.
I feel like that's going to be like, I mean, I think it's pretty clear in the footage, but like one of my thoughts was that like, oh, it feels like a Han Solo Greedo moment. It was like, who shot first, Murtaugh or Riggs?
I still think all of the cops open fire, liquefy Joshua, and he just soaks into his front yard. A tree grows there. They call it his Joshua tree, and they move on.
Jesus.
Oh, God. Cut that line. That was bad.
So the end of this film, Riggs goes to visit his wife's grave. And Riggs goes to the now beat up and demolished Murtaugh house to leave Murtaugh a bullet with a bow on it, saying that he'll know what this means. Which, yes, very, like, jokes aside from the leaving a bullet in the front of a cop's house, nice sentiment of he knows the conversation they had previously. It's a nice callback of he'll understand. I'm no longer on edge like that, at least in terms of needing to worry about me. I'm in a much better spot now. And then Murtaugh meets him outside to have that heart-to-heart, and then convinces him to come inside and join his family for Christmas, and he brings his dog. Very nice ending, and I like where they kind of left them off.
It's a Christmas miracle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bullet, I don't know, did we hit on that? Like, the bullet's significant because he says he carries that one specifically.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
hollow
really,
point.
really...
That will do the job.
Oh, yeah. We probably should have explained that bullet for the end scene. So, yeah, earlier when he ends up having the sequence of when Murtaugh gives him his gun and says, fine, shoot yourself, he's talking about how he carries a hollow point bullet so it can blow out the back of his head and just make sure he really does the job right. Riggs carries it, not Murtaugh.
This one's for you.
Has been carrying this bullet since they became partners, just for that point where he's like, here, use this. So, yes, that's where that bullet came from. So, that's the end. It's a Merry Christmas had by all. It spawned a franchise. It spawned a TV series that had a lot of issues. But overall, I think it still holds up. It's a good action film. It's a good buddy cop film. And I think the series kind of continues in a sometimes good direction, sometimes difficult to enjoy. I personally don't like how in 4 they decide to use an entire 6 minutes to give Chris Rock a stand-up routine in the middle of the police station where he talks about how much he hates telemarketers, and Joe Pesci joins in on the bit with him.
It's not telemarketers, it's cell phone providers.
Oh, that's, yeah.
Nick
I don't remember the other films. I probably haven't seen them either. But the fact that they added Joe Pesci, I'm just like, maybe I won't see those ones.
So Joe Pesci is not normal Joe Pesci in it.
Yeah.
Oh, no?
No, he's like comedic relief Joe Pesci. Murtaugh and Riggs hate him.
Yeah, where he's like I forget if he's tied into something or he's an informant or something like that, but he's not like Goodfellas Joe Pesci. It's more like sniveling, low-level crime guy wanting to please everybody of I'll get that for you. Oh, okay, just let me be a part of this kind of thing.
I see. Maybe I'll give one of them a shot.
Yeah. And then Joe Pesci and Danny Glover went on to be in Gone Fishing together, where two buddies who just want to go fishing end up getting tied up in this whole crime caper. I saw it once. We rented it at the library. So, any last thoughts on Lethal Weapon for this holiday season?
I also really enjoyed this film. I think Mel Gibson's acting in it is phenomenal. I mean, there's a lot of scenes that rely entirely on him being able to sell it, and he does a great job of it. It really reminds me of that period of time when I really liked Mel Gibson as an actor.
Yeah, he was a big name for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, for a very long time, I guess I still am. I'm a huge fan of the first two Mad Max films. I think they're incredible.
You don't like Beyond Thunderdome?
Not really. I think it kind of went out of control, kind of like a Thor Love and Thunder kind of thing. Whereas I thought the first two had like some really interesting implications about like the lore and the storyline of it. But I really liked his early career, and this kind of reminded me of that. You know, it's got some moments where it's, you know, early 1980s. It's got some cringe from that.
Oh, definitely.
But like, you know, you go into a movie from the 1980s expecting that, especially when that's about cops. So like, yeah, there's a couple cringy things, but you kind of get past it because you have this great chemistry between Mel Gibson and Danny Glover, and it's just a really fun action film that's, you know, got some interesting characters and kind of that early 80s, you know, action cop vibe, but one that I think is done with a bigger budget and, you know, slightly more witty writing than I think you see in a lot of them. Like, you know, I know Shane Black also did Last Action Hero, but I think this is kind of like a better written version of that kind of story.
And I mean, I think Shane Black really comes into like prime Shane Black writing with stuff like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and it's funny because you can see Kiss Kiss Bang Bang in this.
Yeah.
Which I think was really fun. Yeah, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
I'm sure that's also a film somewhere.
It's gotta be. It has to be. And so like I see some of that where it's like it's witty, a little dark, super action packed. Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I remember seeing the credits and being like, "Oh, Shane Black did this." I was like, "Wait, I know this one."
Yeah.
So that was a cool surprise when I sat down to watch it.
So Nick, what are your final thoughts on Lethal Weapon before we put a bow on this?
It makes me want to rewatch the other three.
Right? And also, like you said, David, remembering how much I liked Mel Gibson from around this time, then I was thinking of like Conspiracy Theory, like I remember liking as a movie, like Ransom, the remake of Get Carter. There's a bunch of stuff from around that time that was still fun in that like action movie vein. I forgot if it was the writer or it might have been Richard Donner. Yeah, I think it was Richard Donner also worked on Maverick, which if you've never seen Maverick, Maverick's a fun movie. It's a like modern movie version of the old Maverick TV series. But in this case, he's like a Wild West days if he's a card sharp and he's like a con man and all of this. But Maverick's also a fun thing that I need to go back and rewatch because I might go back and be like, oh no, never mind. It's not a fun thing. But we'll see eventually.
I thought it was good enough for a rewatch. And like I mentioned at the start of the show, I seen Die Hard so many times that with like 10 watches of Die Hard for one watch of Lethal Weapon, either it's a breath of fresh air compared to the other action Christmas time movie, but I did like this one a lot more than Die Hard. It's still like, you know, one of the top movies that I've ever watched, but I did not like the Die Hard sequels compared to like the Lethal Weapon ones. So at least,
which I think Die Hard with a Vengeance, Die Hard 3 was originally written as a Lethal Weapon sequel, and then
that makes a lot more sense.
Die Hard,
yeah, because I mean I liked with a Vengeance the best out of all of the sequels, but at least you know, I don't remember any of the Lethal Weapon sequels enough, 2 and 3 anyway, because I know 4 like the back of my hand, but that's only because it was just, you know, back when we were growing up, you know, when you watched a movie, sometimes you watched it like 20, 30 times because it's Cable. A lot. There's nowhere else that you can watch it. Or you can't just pick and choose what you want. You're kind of forced to. So if you've got HBO, you're going to be seeing it a lot. But yeah, I mean, I really liked it a lot and definitely holds up.
So We can't thank you enough for coming along for the revisit of Lethal Weapon. If you like what you heard, please drop a review, rating, and subscribe to us on Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts to help us out. You can still find us on Instagram at Screen Refresh, or find us on YouTube at the Screen Refresh Network. You can also shoot us an email at screenrefresh@gmail.com or join us on our Discord. So for David, Dean, and Nick, this is Tim. Take care of yourself. Catch us next on Rule of Thirds, airing every third Monday of the month, and our sister podcast, Don't Open This Podcast, every second and fourth Monday of the month. And you have yourself happy holidays.